This is lesson 1.3 out of the Rates, Ratios, and Statistics book. Lesson 1.3 in Mrs. Walker's class is on page 101. Lesson 1.3 is titled, oops, hold on, I didn't write it on my notes. Oh, Customary Conversions. Here we go. Customary Conversions. When we're talking about measurements, customary measurements or standard measurements are the measurements we're most familiar with in the United States, such as, inches, feet, miles, a cup, a pint, a quart, those kind of things, not metric system. We'll be dealing with that in a future lesson. So, customary conversions. And starting with a warm-up, we have write the first 4 terms of a geometric sequence. Now, if you don't remember how to do this, refer back to lesson 1.2. That's where we learned how to do these. Oops, I shouldn't have put a period there. We're not actually done with this sentence. Of a geometric sequence with the given first term and ratio. So we're going to give you the first term and ratio. You have to write the first 4 terms of the sequence. All right, so number 1. First term is 10,000. Oops, not 1,000. 10,000. And the ratio, Oh yeah, okay. Ratio is 1/10. I think we had a problem like this in either our practice notes or in the notes yesterday, or whenever you went over lesson 1.3 or 1.2. Second one is first term 1 ratio 3. And number 3 is the following sequence geometric. Okay, why or why not? All right, so this is, can you remember what the difference is between a recursive sequence and a geometric sequence? If you're not sure, look back to when we talked about recursive sequences in the last block of the Intro to Algebra book, and you'll be able to answer this question. All right, so 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, ... Okay, and the last one, number 4, complete. One foot equals how many inches? 1 hour equals how many minutes? Okay, and here's our I can statement. I can convert customary measurements. That's what we'll be learning in today's lesson. Converting customary measurements, standard measurements. All right. So dark green pencil, underline here. And then I'm going to make some quick little notes to talk about, kind of turn my paper sideways, and in this little margin area, I'm going to make some notes about customary measurements. All right, so in lengths, when we're talking about lengths, we're talking about inches, feet, yards, miles. Okay. When we're talking about weight, customary units are ounces, pounds, tons. And when we're talking about volume, like liquid volume, we use cups, pints, quarts, gallons. There are others, but these are just the most common ones we use in everyday life. All right, so I just wanted to get that in there so we've got something to remind us about and refer to during this lesson. Okay, so now I have one small little notes piece, and when you get yours, make sure you cut it off right underneath the last part. It'll be a whole normal size square, and we don't need all that space. So just cut it off right underneath where it talks about larger divide. All right, so I'll get that glued in. I'm going to glue it in the upper left position, not covering up my notes I made in the margin. I'll get my glue going. Only need a very tiny bit. Unit conversions, how do we do it? Unit conversions means that we're converting different kinds of units. So like inches to feet, or feet to yards, or days to weeks, or minutes to hours, those kinds of things. All right, and there's a way that we do that, and that's what we're going to learn in this lesson. All right, so unit conversions. What's on this little slip I just glued is really the key to understanding this lesson. So when you're converting two smaller units, that means you're going from larger to smaller, then you multiply. Okay, and when you are converting to larger units, that means from smaller to larger, then you divide. All right, you got to get that in your head, because that's the key to knowing what to do to make the conversion happen. All right, so let me give you some examples on how that looks. So, A. 2 miles, I'm going to abbreviate, MI, equals how many feet? Okay, 2 miles equals how many feet? All right, well, first we have to know what 1 mile is. And don't worry if you don't know all these numbers. We're giving you a conversion chart that you'll be putting into your notebook. So I'll just tell you right now that our first step is to write out well, our first step is to write out what is 1 mile. All right. So 1 mile equals 5,280 feet. All right. Then we've got to ask ourselves, are we converting from a smaller to a larger or a larger to a smaller? All right. Well, we are converting to smaller units because feet are smaller than miles. Smaller units. So that means we're going to be multiplying. And we're going to multiply this 2 here times whatever 1 mile is to figure out how many 2 miles is. So 2 times 5,280 equals 10,560. All right. So I know that 2 miles equals 10,560 feet. Right? So I'm going to use my green pen highlighter here and just kind of highlight, how did I pick out the numbers to multiply? Well, I knew I needed to know how many 2 miles is, and I knew that 1 mile is this many feet. So 2 times 5,280 was going to get me how many feet 2 miles is. All right, so I'm going to make a little, okay, here's an example of where you would be converting from larger to a smaller unit, from larger to smaller. You know, I think I'm going to do this. From large to small, okay? From small to large. Hopefully that helps. Okay. So here's another example. Let's see, I'll put it over here. Okay, so B. Let's say I want to know there are let's see 280 days equals how many weeks? Okay, 280 days equals how many weeks? All right, well, I first need to know how many days is in 1 week. All right, so 7 days equals 1 week. All right, okay, then I've got to ask myself, am I converting from a larger unit to a smaller unit, or from a smaller unit to a larger unit? Well, a day is smaller than a week. So I'm going from small to large. So I'm going to be using divide. Right? So what am I dividing? The 280 days divided by 7 days. And that's going to tell me that there are 40, that 280 days equals 40 weeks. Right? So I'm going to do a little highlighting to show you how I picked it out. First I had the problem. Okay. Then I figured out how much it is for just one of the units, 1 week. That was 7. And I took the 280 and divided it by 7. I knew I was going to use division because I'm converting from a smaller unit to a larger unit. And that gave me the answer of 40. All right. Okay, so let's look at one more example. C. All right, 18 inches. Oops, need a H in there. 18 inches equals how many feet? All right, well, I need to put down how many inches equals 1 foot. So 12 inches equals 1 foot. Right? You're always trying to get back to what is one of what you're trying to convert to in order to figure out how many in the conversion. So 12 inches equals 1 foot. I know that. So that means then that I'm going to take 18 and divide it by 12. And 18 divided by 12 is 1 5/10, 1 1/2. 12 goes into 18, 1 1/2 times. And you can show this as 1 1/2 or 1 5/10. Usually in customary measurements, we use fractions, and in decimals we use, or I'm sorry, in metric we use decimals. But you could write it either way, and it's correct. So I think I'm going to do that, and I'm going to write 1/2. Okay, 1 1/2. All right, so let's see. Let's get our highlighter here and realize, how did we figure this out? Well, this is what we wanted to know, 18. We divided by what we know. There are 12 inches in a foot, and that gave us this division problem. We knew it was going to be division because days are smaller units than weeks, so we were going from small to large, which means we would be dividing. All right, so there's an example of that, and there's an example of that. Okay, so there's one other thing I want to show you. Let's take our green pencil and just make a little box over here. And I'll show you one other problem that you'll see when it comes to converting. All right, so let's say that there are 8 ounces in 1 cup, and that's true. Well, if that's true, and it is, how many ounces are in 4 cups? Okay. All right, to figure this out, it is as simple as taking your brain back to when we made equivalent fractions, and we had to build up to an equivalent fraction, or when we simplify fractions, we build down. That doesn't sound right. we take a larger, what appears to be a larger fraction, and make it a smaller fraction. It's not really. They're equal. Oh my gosh, I don't think I'm explaining that right. You'll see what I mean. Okay, here we go. All right, so I've got 8 ounces in 1 cup. All right, see that? And it equals what? Well, if I have, the ounces are up here and the cups are down here, right? So if I want to know how many there are in 4 cups, then I'm going to put 4 down here because my cups are in the denominator, my ounces are in the top. And then this is where I ask myself, what did I have to do to get this 1 to a 4? Well, I had to multiply it by 4, right? So what you do to the bottom, you've got to do to the top. So if I multiply 8 times 4, 8 times 4 is 32. 32. And so now we've just made this equivalent fraction. So this tells us that there are 32 ounces in 4 cups. All right? All right, so, well, how about if there was, how many ounces if in 8 cups? Okay, how about if it was 8 cups? All right, well, now I'm going to write it out so that there are 8, oops, that's not right. Okay, so I've got, I know that there are 8 ounces in 1 cup, but I want to know how many ounces if there are 8 cups. Okay, if there are 8. All right, well, what did I have to do to build this 1 up to an 8? Okay, I had to multiply it by 8 times 8. Right, what you do to the bottom, you have to do to the top. So I have to multiply this times 8. And that gives me 8 times 8 is 64. So it's just building equivalent fractions to figure out these kinds of conversions. All right. Okay, well, that's the notes for lesson 1.3. Let's take a look at some practice problems. Okay, here's our practice problems for lesson 1.3. In our practice problems, that's going to look very much like what you're going to see on your worksheet. So number 1 is just asking you to choose a reasonable estimate. So this is where they're just trying to see, do you understand the difference between a pound and an ounce, or yards and feet, or a pint and a gallon? What makes sense in each each one of these. And again, we'll be giving you a chart, because I know some of you don't really know the differences, and that's okay. That's where we learn this. So we'll be giving you a chart to put into your math notebooks. Number 2 is asking you to complete each conversion. So this is the same thing that we did in our notes. No real differences there. And that's really all for the practice problems, as that's the only kind of problems you're going to see on your worksheet. Okay, so let's see how these work. All right, choose a reasonable estimate. All right, a reasonable estimate. Well, a glass of juice, 1 pint or 1 gallon. Well, a gallon, picture a gallon of milk, okay? A gallon jug of milk. Would that be a glass of juice? Maybe for some of you, but that would certainly not be a glass of juice for me. So more reasonable would be 1 pint. All right? Now, the height of a door, is it 7 yards or 7 feet? Well, let's remember that there are 3 feet in a yard. So 3 times 7 is 21 feet. Is it reasonable that a door would be 21 feet high? Okay, in some big buildings maybe, but we're talking about your average door in your average house. Well, let's consider that your average man is, about 6 feet tall. So does it make sense that the height of a door would be 21 feet tall or 7 yards? Or more likely 7 feet tall? Yeah, 7 feet tall is more reasonable. All right, the weight of a kitten, 1 pound or 1 ounce. All right, well, an ounce, let's see, well, 1 pound is about the weight of a soup can, I think. I think that's fairly close. Or you can imagine a pound of hamburger you might buy at the grocery store, right? An ounce is 1/16 of that. So most human babies, when they are born, are somewhere around 7 or 8 pounds. Okay, now let's think of the weight of a kitten. A pound or an ounce? Well, an ounce would be something incredibly small. And while kittens are certainly very small, they're going to weigh in much more than an ounce. So 1 pound would be more reasonable for a kitten. All right, so let's complete each conversion. All right, first one is 3 miles equals how many feet? All right, well, 1 mile equals 5,000. Oh, shoot. I always forget this one. What is it? 5,280 feet. Okay, we write it. We get it down to 1 first. All right, now, miles to feet. Are we going smaller to larger or larger to smaller? Well, on this one, we're going smaller. We're going larger to smaller, so we're going to be multiplying. So we're going to multiply what? Well, we're going to multiply 3 times the number in 1 mile. So that would be 3 times 5,280. And that equals 15,840. So there are 15,840 feet, 840 feet, 840 feet in 3 miles. All right? All right, so the next conversion is 140 days equals how many weeks? All right, well, how many days are there in 1 week? There are 7 days in 1 week. All right, now, days is a smaller unit than weeks, so I'm going smaller to larger. That means I'll be dividing. And what am I dividing? My information is right here. 140 divided by 7 equals 20. So that means that there are 140 days equals 20 weeks. All right. Okay, now C. All right, so 27 inches equals how many feet? Well, with inches, first let's find out how many inches are in 1 foot. All right, we know there are 12 inches equals 1 foot. Right? Now, inches to feet, smaller to larger. Smaller to larger tells me I'm going to be dividing. What am I dividing? What I see right here. 27 divided by 12 equals 2 and 25 hundredths, which is equivalent to 2 1/4 feet. And that's how I'm going to write it, just because we typically use fractions in customary measurements. So 27 inches equals 2 1/4 feet. All right? Okay, last one. Oh, we're talking about tons here. Okay, so 5,000 pounds equals how many tons? Well, let's see how many pounds equals 1 ton. All right, so 2,000 pounds equals 1 ton. All right, I'm going from smaller to larger units. Pounds are smaller than tons. From smaller to larger. So that means, again, I'm going to be dividing. And what am I dividing? My number's right here. 5,000 divided by 2,000 equals 2 5/10, 2.5. All right, or 2 1/2, and that's how I'm going to write it. So 5,000 pounds is 2 1/2 tons. All right. Okay, so that's your practice problems. Let's take a look at your worksheet for this lesson. Worksheet looks very much, of course, like everything we've just done. So it starts out with choosing and I'm going to circle this, a reasonable estimates. We don't play what-if games. It's kind of like when we talk about inferring. We're talking about what's the most likely scenario, not all the possible possibilities, okay? So remember that when don't overthink these. I mean, what's the most reasonable estimate for these? Complete each conversion. All right, so this is the meat of what we've been doing in our notes and on the practice problems. Same thing. And this is this last problem here is really the same as this. Don't overthink it. Set it up the same way. It's still a conversion from feet to inches and then feet to yards. 2 problems there. Okay. All right, so that's your worksheet. That leaves us with our exit ticket. As usual, I don't give you the answers or show you how to do these. This is for extra practice if you choose to take it. Okay, so that is lesson 1.3 out of our Rates, Ratios, and Statistics book. Remember, the only way to learn math is to do math, and mistakes are proof that you're learning.